Hey, John, Florida Panthers 2 games away from a Stanley Cup championship, and our old friend Roberto Luongo 2 games away, 2 wins away from a Stanley Cup championship. Of course, he was here in 2011, winning both games on home ice. We know how that turned out. But a word or two about Florida and getting halfway home.
You know, Paul talked about it post-game last night, is that they got to their game in the third period of game 1. And it carried through last night. And the Oilers just had no answer for the way the Panthers defense controlled the front of the ice, the front of the net rather, the center of the ice, scoring chances in the high danger. And I'm not an analytics guy, but the scoring chances in high danger areas in game 1 were 16-6 for Edmonton. I would suggest the Oilers didn't have 6 last night, period. They just were not allowed to get to places where they could shoot the puck and really challenge Bobrovsky at all. I have when I was starting in this business, we used to think 3 stars were really important. You know, who are the 3 stars? Whoever picked the 3 stars last night and gave Sergei Bobrovsky a star, I mean, come on now. Jeez, there are 3 other players on that Florida Panther team that deserve some accolade before the goalie did. That's for sure.
The Oilers are a weird team, John, and we saw this in the Canucks series. We saw them in the Dallas series. Like there are times where you can't imagine that another team can beat them just because of how good the offense looks, in particular the power play. And then the very next game, they are a completely different team. Like, you know, against the Canucks, they had, you know, whatever 12-shot game, you know, to win. I mean, I don't know what to make of this team. And if they go down meekly here, boy, are they back to the drawing board once again, because if they lose in 7 games, well, you come darn close. You had the makings of a winning team. My goodness, do they need a game 3 win?
Yeah, they certainly do, but you know, they did win. They have won 12 games in the playoffs. I mean, I don't think it's back to the drawing board completely. You know, there's going to be, you know, touches made, you know, and tweaks made to this roster anyway in the summertime with the new general manager, because Kenny Holland will be finished at the end of the year. So from that perspective, you know, would it be disappointing if they got swept? Sure, it'll be disappointing if they got swept. This is a team, though, and watching them for the last 2 or 3 years, guys, that they are victims of their own success. And they start to believe themselves that they're really good, and then they stop pressing, and they tend to work to the outside thinking, well, they can solve that problem. Here's the one thing that they have been under Chris Knobloch, and that is resilient. They don't panic. They know that they have to make changes. They've lost 2 games in a row once before in these playoffs to Dallas in games 2 and 3. I suspect we're going to see another different team, Blake, in game 3 in Edmonton. And at 2-1, we're going to be saying, wow, are they coming back for game 6? And it would not surprise me if that's the case.
Well, all the neutrals out there really hoping for an Edmonton win in game 3. Otherwise, we have a very quick series here, potentially. Are you rooting for Roberto, John? Is that a guy that you would love to see hoist the cup should Florida win?
You know, there are some great stories in the game. And let's face it, what Roberto Luongo does and has done for hockey, and what jumps to mind for me, guys, is after the Parkland shooting. And I don't know if you recall that speech he made on the ice without any notes. That was one of those great moments in a very sad situation that you go, wow, this guy is the real deal. You know, and we certainly most of your viewing audience or listening audience view him as a Canuck. But to me, that proved his love of South Florida, his love of being a Panther, and his contributions to that franchise. And that's probably one of the reasons when I think of Roberto and the franchise, that's the first thing I think of. Is not his goaltending, but his ability to stand in front of 15 or 16,000 people and show compassion for people who have gone through a terrible tragedy.
Yep. We always knew he was a feeler. He speaks from the heart. And as great as Sasha Barkov and Aaron Ekblad and Sergei Bobrovsky have been in this postseason run, when I think of Mr. Florida Panther, I think of Roberto Luongo. He has been that significant to that franchise over two stints.
I'm forced to think of Doug McLean, but that's only because he if I don't, he'll yell at me. So
I thought you were going to say Scott Mellenby because of Ralph or something like that, but they're just
no. Hey, well, listen, we were. I was front and center in that first series in 1996 with Rats and Scotty, and who I've known since he was 9 years old, and Doug, who was the coach, and in the old Miami Arena right downtown. It was an awful place. Oh, it's really is kind of refreshing to see what's happened in Florida and what Bill Zito has done there. And although they still have 2 games to win. I'm not presenting them with the cup yet, but they deserve some accolades for how that franchise has been turned around in the last 2 or 3
we've
seasons.
seen this with Florida sports, though. They're funny. Like, they'll support the winner, but only that. Like the Marlins, the Heat, like there's not a lot of enduring fandom there. Like they only support the winner. I hope there's
so much to do that you better win to get them off the beaches and get them out of the sunshine.
What'd you make of the officiating last night? We're talking officiating a lot in these playoffs, and maybe it's just because we've been reintegrated a little bit more intensely here in Vancouver to the NHL playoffs. So maybe it's this level all the time, but you tell me.
That wasn't their best night.
Mm-hmm.
It was. It wasn't. They. I didn't like the 5-minute major to Foegele. I thought that once they had set the bar with the Bennett knee on Bouchard, that would have made a similar situation. Kevin Bieksa made a really good point last night about that. So I would have seen the 2-minute minor there. But at the same time, in the end, it didn't have much impact on the game because the penalty that Florida took seconds later, the Oilers scored 4-on-4. So in the end, the 5-minute major did not have much effect on the game, other than the fact that the Oilers were down to 11 forwards, which I don't think presented much of a challenge because they needed Leon and Connor on the ice more anyway in order to have some scoring opportunities.
Well, that's the thing. They win the Draisaitl decision because he could have easily been tossed for that, and Foegele stays, and the puck over glass was the right call in the end, I think, as well. So.
You do?
Yeah, man, the puck's on his stick when that blade is into the neutral zone. Not on the ice, but it's on his stick in the air in the neutral zone. I think that's my seat.
Well, the good news is that we'll be able to review that next year.
Yeah,
and they have tried. They are going to fix it. Does it help the Oilers this year? No, it doesn't help the Oilers this year, but. Next season, those are one of the situations that can be reviewable, as the 5-minute major was for Foegele, and at least they had a second chance to look at it. And I don't necessarily agree with the ruling, but that's another story for another day.
Help me out on this one, Shannon, because last year we had a unique Sunbelt market win its first Stanley Cup. There was a couple-hour celebration in and around the arena. Then everyone dispersed, and they did a parade down Las Vegas Boulevard, much to the chagrin of some locals who were like, do we really have to close Las Vegas?
We have a hockey team?
Yeah. Where's the parade if Florida wins it? Are you going Miami?
Well,
or you going South?
No, I tell you what's really happened there is with their practice facility in downtown Lauderdale, this has become a Lauderdale team now. It's not as much a Miami team, which is not. I mean, it's not that close, Miami.
No,
so this is
not.
So this is a Fort Lauderdale team now, and so I would suggest that if the parade isn't right on the beach, which is not a bad idea, come to think of it.
Totally.
I would suggest that it's in downtown Lauderdale, which is a pretty good sized city itself, because that's where their practice. They've done a magnificent job for the new practice facility there. That I think is becoming the focal point of hockey for the group. The arena, if you remember, is on the edge of the Everglades, about 15 miles from downtown Fort Lauderdale. And so if you're trying to create interest, you want to be downtown in the city. And so at least this practice facility has created an awareness of the hockey club with people who are walking down the street in Fort Lauderdale.
Mm. Yes, if you're ever going to a game there, don't fly into Miami. You'll be like an hour and a half away and cost yourself $150 in cab or Uber fare to get on out to the arena. Big test here for McDavid and Draisaitl. Like we're going to see what they're made of. I suspect we will see the absolute best they can muster at this stage, deep into a playoff run in Game 3.
I think you have to add Hyman and Bouchard to that too. Simply because if you look what's happened in the first 3 rounds, and dare I remind Canuck fans, it was the 4 of them that made the difference. You know, Zach has been stuck in front of the net again in this series, but there's always a stick on him. There's always a body in front of him. He hasn't had near the latitude to work in front of Bobrovsky that he did in the first 3 rounds. That's a challenge. He has to be better. Evan Bouchard did not have a good night last night, even though he played more than 30 minutes because of the Darnell Nurse issue. Bouchard has to be better defensively. He can't get rid of the puck as quickly as he did last night on the Rodriguez goal. And he also has to be more effective from the point, shooting the puck. And so I would say that it's not just on Leon and Connor, and I agree with you. I would put Zach Hyman and Evan Bouchard in that because that's the group of 4 that have put the Oilers in this position to be in the Stanley Cup Final, in my opinion.
I don't think, as we move on, I don't think GM of the Year is a big needle mover for the fans. But if you're just judging by the season, do Canucks fans have a gripe that Patrik Allvin should have been the guy rather than Jim Nill? If you're just looking at the season.
Well, here's the anomaly with this award. The award is actually voted on not at the end of the regular season.
That's right.
The award is voted on at the end of the second round. And the reason I know that is I used to vote for it. I haven't voted for it the last 2 or 3 years, but I was part of a smaller group of people that had votes on general manager. And it was done this way. Coley Campbell, when they created this award, said, we have to start rewarding the playoffs a little bit more with our awards, and we're going to start with this one. And there is some logic to that. So that's why I think when you look at Dallas advancing, Vancouver not, I think that you can sit there and justify Jim Nill. I think Jim Nill made some great trades during the season, as Patrik did. And when you look and combine the advancement to the 3rd round, they had more points than the Canucks in the regular season. I think it's a fair vote, and I think that it was, justifiable that Nill was 1 and Allvin was 2.
Honestly, second round seems odd to me, John. Why wouldn't you reward the entirety of the playoffs? Like, why draw the line at the?
There is an arbitrariness to it, Matt, but I don't have the answer for you. They wanted to. I think if they thought it was just for the playoffs, then it would be a little more unfair, and it would be down to a ballot of 2 people.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to reward something for the playoffs and something for the regular season.
Gotcha.
I think that's what Coley was thinking.
That's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah. CapFriendly, John. It's going away.
Yeah. It's amazing.
What are you hearing? Like,
by the way, blatant plug. I did not know this when we did the booking, but Ted Leonsis is on with us next week. So it's another question for the list now that the Washington Capitals have purchased this. So and I don't know the logic behind it, other than perhaps that's a capologist they want to work in their organization. And Brian McClellan has said that, we want this guy and we're going to buy the whole thing in order to keep it happy. That does make some sense.
Well, and what's caught me by surprise is that Friedman and Merrick talk about some teams are shook by all of this, that like they relied on CapFriendly to a degree. Do you know
I
anything
can't
about
believe
that?
that. I can't believe that.
I can't believe that either. Like you're a multi, you're a
Well, and not only that, the every team has knowledge of every contract and the terms of every contract. They don't need CapFriendly to know those numbers. They don't.
Mhm.
They can tell you exactly what the deals are. They can tell you what CapFriendly did was it made it easy. One-stop shop.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
but all the information on CapFriendly is available to every team all the time. All you have to do is phone Sean in the office in
It's
Toronto.
probably easier to navigate though than the Excel spreadsheet that the NHL sends you, or that you've got in-house yourself. It probably is easier to navigate. So I wouldn't doubt that they use it, but it probably is not integral to their business operations.
No, I know it's a fascinating story. And kudos to those guys for doing it. But I don't think in the end we're going to miss it, and we're just going to all go to Puckpedia instead.
Our colleague Frank Saravelli is reporting that Mitch Marner may well have played his final game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What are you hearing? He's got 1 year left on his contract, and it does seem like there's bigger changes afoot this summer in Toronto.
Yeah, although I'm a little surprised at that report. I don't doubt it. I'm surprised at that report. My understanding was that there was going to be a tremendously larger emphasis put on what happens in the blue line and what happens in goal, and that goal scoring was not an issue for this hockey club.
Mm-hmm.
And Marner was part of the solution there, not part of the problem. Brad Treliving, I think, has probably been able to identify what has to happen with this team in order to play. Well, we've learned it now. Playoff hockey, Panther hockey. That's the division they're in. That's the conference they're in. So they better be better at that kind of play than anything else. Craig Berube is going to solve a few of those problems, but I think most of the problems are on defense and in goal, not with what happens up front. And Matt, you know what happens. Blake, you do too in this town. This is the stuff soap operas are made of. Mitch and Willie and Austin aren't getting along. Oh my God. They're still great players.
Yeah. Hey, does their
They're
old
still
friend
great players.
are they going to make a play for Jacob Markstrom? Is Treliving going to see about reuniting with Jacob Markstrom?
I don't know that, I think if you put a list together, I think you have to put Jacob Markstrom on that list. Nashville is in a position of having two goaltenders that are going to be viewed as number one goaltenders. With Saros and Iskarov, you have to wonder whether one of them is going to leave.
Boston too.
Mm-hmm.
And Linus Ullmark, you have to wonder where Linus Ullmark's future is in Boston. You're right. Although if I'm Don Sweeney, I'm not trading in my division. I don't care what people say. I'm not. I'm moving him to the West. I'm not moving him in the East.
Spot on.
So we'll have to see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Because of such the short runway, John, if this final were to go 6 or 7 games in the start of the draft season, and of course the new league year, do you anticipate that we have a lot of things like ready to go here, that once we've played the final game in the Stanley Cup Final, we are going to see teams get busy transactional with personnel?
Well, we are, it's really kind of, it's kind of sad that, even the two teams in the final are going to have to decide what to do with some players.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Which is just, hey, you win the cup. Oh, by the way, you're no longer on this team. It's becoming more and more that way, just from a practicality point of view when the season ends this close to the end of the month.
There could be a guy in the parade, John, who knows that his time with the Oilers is done, like immediately.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. or Panthers, or Oilers. Could be. We're not getting out the cup yet, man.
We're a long way from an Oilers parade. We are 2 games away potentially from a Florida Panthers.
Oh, you're just pandering to that Vancouver audience. Good for you.
Maybe just a little.
Good for you.
We're going to have our own booth in downtown Lauderdale for the Panthers parade.
Maybe you can convince the guys that own this thing now. You'd go and do a live remote at the Panthers parade.
That's right. Because
you wouldn't be able to do it and convince them to go to Edmonton.
Blake and I are looking at the numbers to see if it makes sense. A long flight, sadly. So
we should have renamed it Panthers Nation after 2 rounds. Yeah.
Don't give them any more ideas. They got enough podcasts.
That's true.
Marvelous stuff. Hey, John, thanks for the time here today. We'll catch up next week, my friend.
Have a great day, boys. Have a great day.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.